life of perhaps Western-type prosperity over a period of time. Now, of course, Russia has followed an unfortunate path of not coming to all of those hopes and expectations and dreams. In fact, its current government is very authoritarian, very nationalist. It is not really a market economy. It is a very corrupt, interventionist, manipulated economy. But at that time as well, in that euphoria of the end of communism as we had lived under it for seemingly all of our lifetimes, we in the West had a sense of triumph. Democracy had won over dictatorship. Capitalism had shown its superiority over socialist-type central planning. The West had been victorious. And certainly compared to what was lived under and known in the Soviet Union, we had been victorious. The evil empire, as Ronald Reagan had called it, had come to an end. But the question is, were we right in being proud of our triumph over the Soviets in that Cold War with their own implosion of their bankrupt and unworkable system? I would like to say no. We did not have any reason to pat ourselves on the back and talk about the success and triumph of freedom. Because the fact we here in the West, and we are the West, I come from the United States, you're living here in the Bahamas, we have our fellow friends who live in various parts of Western Europe, Great Britain, but the fact is that we have not been free for a very long time. You know, in the United States, you know how Americans can sometimes be. By golly, I'm proud to be an American. Where else would you want to live? Where we live better than anywhere else in the world? We're richer and everybody wants to be an American. Okay, we can get a little irritating. I understand that. And that's true. If you compare America or Great Britain or many of the Western nations and you look at countries in Asia or Africa or Latin America, we certainly seem like freer societies, more prosperous societies. But I would like to suggest that that is the wrong benchmark of comparison. That is the wrong benchmark of comparison. The benchmark of comparison in terms of especially economic liberty is not to ask ourselves, are we freer than some terrible despotism and poverty-stricken nation on a different continent in what used to be known as the Third World? But do we have more economic freedom today than what our grandparents or great-grandparents would have taken for granted 100 years ago? I would like to suggest not. If we could go back into a time machine to, let's say, 1909, what would we observe then? Governments, such as Great Britain or the United States, consumed less than 5% of the national income of their societies in local, regional, and federal or national taxes. The government hardly regulated anything in the society. Industry was free. Individuals could enter any profession or enterprise without license, without regulation, without government bureaucratic approval or inspection. There was no welfare state. Individuals could not call upon the state for redistributions of wealth, for government handouts, for attempts to manipulate the tax system in the name of some type of income or wealth egalitarianism. And the people who lived 100 years ago in most Western nations took this for granted, that it was not the duty, the responsibility of the government to care or tend over them and their affairs and that of their families. Now, in that sense, in that benchmark of comparison, we in the West are no longer free societies, but what our grandparents or great-grandparents would have taken for granted. We, in fact, have moved very far down a road of government regulation, intervention, and interventionism, and I'll even say socialism. Much that we take for granted today and find it difficult even to challenge or question, our grandparents would have considered subversive threats to a truly free society. The present economic crisis is indicative of this. Okay, the present economic crisis is indicative of this. We live in a global economy. The epicenter of this recent crisis may very well have been in the United States and on Wall Street. But the fact is that there's no part of the Western world, in fact the globe as a whole, who has not been impacted by what has happened the last year and a half. How did this come about? Why did it occur? How has it impacted upon us? And why is it so difficult for our economies to recover? The heart of the problem is that we have one institution in particular in the West that is the last bastion and residue of unchallenged and unquestioned socialism. And that is what I call monetary central planning. And what do I mean by monetary central planning? Your country, my country, every country in the world takes for granted that it is the duty and the responsibility of its government to have monopoly control and management of our monies. And I would argue that that government management and monopoly over our monies is at its core the essential reason how we got into this economic crisis, why it's so difficult to get out of it, and why it's having all these ripple effects on each one of us as we try to get by in our interdependent global economy. What do I mean by this? Well, the importance of money is that if you think of it, we buy and sell, we trade and exchange, but we don't trade goods for goods. I don't sell my teaching services at Northwood University, for example, for the bread I want or the milk that I want to purchase or the suit of clothes that I'd like to acquire. We use a medium of exchange, money. I trade my labor services. As a teacher, I receive a money income, and then I turn around and use my money to buy all the things that I want in the society. Money, therefore, is, if you will, on one side of every exchange. There is no escape from money's presence in all of the business transactions, the trades that we make, the investments we undertake. Money is on one side of every exchange. Therefore,